It's September 30th, 2024. I'm with Mr. John J. Jeckovich. We just had a beautiful session with Mr. Jeckovich's over 40-year friend, Nancy Slater. And Nancy Slater brought back such unbelievable memories. Nancy Slater said things that we all forgot about.
Yeah.
Isn't Nancy Slater such a wonderful person?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first section. Today, once again, is September 30th, 2024, and with Mr. John J. Jeckovich, World War II combat veteran from the Battle of the Bulge. Mr. Jeckovich was with Company H, 2nd Battalion, 291st Regiment of the 75th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army during World War II. During World War II. None of us were probably born at that time, but that was one hell of a bloody war. Mr. Jeckovich received the Purple Heart and 2 Bronze Stars. Mr. Jeckovich was in many wars during World War II. The war was a fluid war, and Mr. Jeckovich was also in the Battle of the Bulge, where he spent many months outside in the snow because it was too unsafe to pull into a barn or abandoned house because you would be a target. Mr. Jeckovich recuperated in hospitals in France, where he met a beautiful lady named Renee, a former nun, and she was an artist, and Mr. Jeckovich would spend much time with her, and when he was able to get back on his feet from the hospital in France, he would take a bus, a train, and then a taxi cab to see Renee. Renee's parents both were slaughtered by the damn Nazis when the Nazis were in control of Paris for 4 years. And then later the Nazis, the SS, slaughtered their 2 younger brothers. They're both teenagers in Paris. Because Nazis were in control of Paris for 4 long years. So Renee was a Roman Catholic nun. She left the convent and had questions about her faith, which is not unusual. Even the Pope has questions. They question their faith. And she went back to Paris in an apartment where she had a studio. And in the studio there was portraits of what Renee did, and some of them were of German officers, correct?
Yeah.
And when you walked in there, weren't you kind of stunned to see all the officer?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so from becoming a nun, a former nun, and now Renee became in the French Resistance.
Resistance fighter, yeah.
For French Resistance. Mr. Jeckovich went down to their headquarters in Paris. What did the headquarters look like?
Yeah, down in the sewer.
They were operating out of the sewer.
Yeah.
But they helped many people. They helped many people. Then Mr. Jeckovich got in the act with many other American soldiers and allies, and they ran those damn Nazis out of Paris. And then later they ran them out of the whole damn world, but that's another story. And so later we found out that Renee, a beautiful person with a great big heart that was close friends with Mr. Jeckovich, she was later detected as being in the French Resistance, and she was later tortured and killed, and that was her end. She loved her country, she fought for her country, and she loved the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, they thought she was a farmer.
Yeah, well, she was getting some of her information by painting the portraits of the soldiers. Well, there's many other facets of Mr. Jeckovich's book, but now we're on the high point. The high point is when Mr. Jeckovich is courting Delphine. Delphine Jeckovich, formerly Delphine Stulak, they were married for 69 long years, and the session of 30 minutes ago was a 30-minute section, and we had a pleasure to speak with Mrs. Nancy Slater. And Nancy Slater was Delphine's and Mr. Jeckovich's friends for 40 years. And she told some of the beautiful things they did together. Mrs. Jeckovich, Delphine Jeckovich, and John Jeckovich were 2 peas in a pod. Nancy told stories on how Mr. Jeckovich would come to the house and Delphine would be handing him the tools or the screws to say fix a fan. Or when Nancy Slater would go to 1594 Sheriff's Lane to visit Delphine and John, the front doors were locked, but she went into the back where Mr. Jeckovich and his wife Delphine built a beautiful workshop, and Mr. Jeckovich would be working on the workbench, building who knows what, because he's got a million tools and a million ideas, and Delphine Stulak was just sitting there. Delphine Jeckovich was just sitting there, just watching him. And that's how they got along so good for 69 years. 69 years. And an interesting fact is usually when someone's married that long and the wife leaves this earth first, the husband usually only lasts 6 or 7 months. Well, Mr. Jeckovich has lasted 4 years since then, and he's doing quite well. By the other side of the coin, when the husband passes after a long marriage, the wife usually continues for many years. It's just the way it is. It's a fact. Reality is reality, and that's where we stand. But Mr. Jeckovich right now is knocking on the door of 100 years old. 100 years old. And say, for example, if you're 40 years old, you have a 10% chance, a 10% chance of making it to 100. Mr. Jeckovich lives by the theory. He has 2 doctors. Mr. Jeckovich has 2 doctors, his left leg and his right leg. It's just that simple. Mr. Jeckovich never took a prescription in his life. Mr. Jeckovich never took a vitamin. Mr. Jeckovich ran for 80 years. Mr. Jeckovich never drank. Mr. Jeckovich never smoked. Mr. Jeckovich, it was always right above board, top of the line with no troubles whatsoever. What got you jogging, Mr. Jeckovich?
Pardon?
What got you started jogging?
What time I start? What year?
What got you started?
I read a book, Johnson's book.
That was probably the best book you read in your life.
Yeah.
Because look at how healthy this guy. Take a look. Zoom into this guy's face. This guy is good. He is youthful and almost 100 years old. He'll shake your hand and knock you down. He'll shake your hand and knock you down. Yeah. You can ask Nancy Slater of all the jobs him and Delphine did in the house. And he wasn't a young guy at the time. He was an older guy. He'd get up on a ladder and do a million different things. Either with the pool, the drapes, the fans, the yard. He did it. I don't think we have too many of these guys left. Keep in mind, during World War II, we had 16,400,000 young men and women that were in the military during World War II. 16,400,000. We have today less than 16,300,000 have died, and as of today, we have way less than 100,000 still living. And the ones that are living are in the 90s or in the early hundreds. But keep in mind, Mr. Jeckovich was an actual combat veteran. Those guys, we only have about less than 7,000 left. Less than 7,000 left. All the rest that might be living today are from the rear echelon. They were great people also. They did things like inventory control, sending out the gasoline.
Working on sidelines, yeah.
Sidelines, but they needed that to keep these guys on the front line, in the snow, in the dirt, watching their buddies get blown up to the left, watching their buddies get blown up to the right. Mr. Jeckovich got shot by a sniper in his shoulder, and then he also had shrapnel in his leg, and he was walking, not walking. He was crawling on his stomach, leaving a trail of blood across the field of Battle of Bulge, and it must have been just by the hand of God that this young nurse from Brooklyn, New York, dragged him back.
Army nurse.
Army nurse, yeah. Dragged them back and brought them to safety just by the hand of God, because the snipers would zero in when they seen that trail of blood, and they'd shoot you up some more. They didn't want you to live. And then towards the end of the war, Mr. Jeckovich was on the Battle of Bulge. That was Hitler's psychotic last-ditch effort to kill more Americans. It wasn't the win. Hitler knew at this point the war was over, he lost. That was a scorched earth theory. They just wanted to kill more Americans, and they killed a lot.
Yeah.
They killed a lot during the Battle of Bulge. Mr. Jeckovich, close friend, got his head blown off, and Mr. Jeckovich, out of his head, this guy only had his glasses hanging from part of a ear. Mr. Jeckovich removed the glasses and closed his eyes. Mr. Jeckovich later contacted the mother and father and told him his young son of 19 years old is dead. That was Lape. That was Donald Lape, a pure hero. Ironically, as the story continues about Donald Lape, for 25 years, Donald Lape's younger brother lived next to Mr. John J. Jeckovich in Florida, and Mr. Jeckovich and Mr. Lape didn't know. And we just found out through an obituary that when this Donald Lape's younger brother passed away, of old age of course, that they mentioned World War II, his older brother, Donald Lape, in the obituary. So it would have been wonderful those two had a chance to converse, but it just didn't happen. They didn't know. They just didn't know. So still the pain and the misery of World War II continues today. It continues today. So now we have less than 7,000 combat vets, and we get a lot of text of all types of questions. Text Mr. Jeckovich at 407-366-0000. Text this war hero, Mr. Jeckovich, at 407-366-0000. Or as we say in Dufusky Island, South Carolina, I call that my God's country, we call it this way, 407-366-0000. 407-366-0000. Any questions you might have. We're losing these guys at 135 a day. So reality is reality. Time to ask now. Mr. Jeckovich, I get this question 20 times a day, maybe more. Where can I buy your book?
They're not selling it.
That book is not for sale.
It's not for sale at all.
That book is not for sale. It's a labor of love about his family and primarily World War II. A hard copy will be at the World War II Museum in New Orleans. Mr. Jeckovich soon will be in New Orleans. We'll be filming him, and he'll have a little booth for himself in the studios in World War II Museum. And we're going to take that AI, so 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you can go to that museum, you can ask World War II vets like Mr. Jeckovich questions, and even though they won't be here, you'll be getting your questions answered. So here's your chance to ask them live, right here. Mr. Jeckovich is sitting in front of you. He jogged for 80 years. When Mr. Jeckovich started jogging, it wasn't fashionable. Old boots, old corduroy pants, old t-shirt. People would yell out and say, hey, you need a ride. Hey, can't you afford a car? What else they would say to you when you're jogging back then?
Get off the streets, you bum.
They'd say, get off the street, you bum. Or at that time, they'd throw a can of Genesee beer at him. And a can of Genesee beer they'd throw at him. And pop him in the back of the head or whatever. The people didn't realize that he wasn't jogging for transportation. He was jogging for health, which I say it was not fashionable then. But Mr. Jeckovich, anyways, was before his time. Not only was he jogging for health, he had unusual vehicles he had made. He had a crew cab international 4-speed, 4-wheel drive pickup trucks. You didn't see that. Now they're on every corner.
Yeah.
They're in every parking lot.
And Volkswagen too.
Yeah, but let me just say about the trucks, the SUV. You did not see a custom-made 4-door international white pickup truck with 4-wheel drive. Everything was 2 doors. Mr. Jeckovich had a custom made by International, and he drove it for many years. As an entrepreneur as he is, he had put a Myers plow on it, and he made lots of money by plowing. And so now, but like I say, you will never see one. They looked odd and unusual back in the 60s. There was a couple, not many. And now, also in the 60s, Mr. Jeckovich had an international Travelall, which is a 4-door SUV. Very odd and unusual. You didn't see these SUVs then. Now, once again, they're in every corner.
Yeah.
So Mr. Jeckovich, on many aspects, was before his time. Crew cab 4x4 truck, jogging for 80 years before people thought it was fashionable, and also the SUV. It just didn't exist back then. On the way to the studio today, Mr. Jeckovich, I seen men and ladies jogging in these very expensive jogging suits. I don't know what the hell they're made of, but they're flashy and jogging and matching gloves and hats. And they had water bottles on them, and they had some type of beepers and all kinds of bullshit. Did you, once you got jogging, like for 30 or 40 years, did you go out and buy all these accessories?
No, I wore my pants, old pants and a t-shirt.
Your whole idea was to run, right?
And I'm running.
You didn't need all that stuff,
I
did
didn't
you?
need all the baggy that stuff.
You didn't need that, did you?
No.
And I have a feeling you did a lot more jogging than these people that are wearing these $400 and $500 uniforms. What do you think?
Yeah.
You just jogged because you wanted to jog.
Yeah.
You didn't jog to make a fashion statement.
Yeah. My principle was to run.
To run like hell, and you ran for 80 years. And that's why you're here today. Your knees blew out, but you got, everything else is working fine. You know, that's a good trade-off. Knees blow off, but everything else works fine. And all those people that threw those Genesee beer cans at you, they're all pushing up Davies. They didn't understand. But a lot of people today are intelligent, and they understanding the key to health is jogging. You won't find a better exercise in the world. The key to health is jogging. If you don't jog, you won't make it. You won't make it. You're going to go early.
They jog and stop, jog and stop, jog and stop.
Yeah. And and explain what you mean by that, Mr. Jeckovich.
Well, they run for a while, then they stop.
That's not good.
And they rest for 10 minutes, then run again. That's killed their system, killed their heart.
So the advice is to keep running.
Set a mark, set a quota, set a mark, set a mile half one day, 2 miles next day, 3 miles next week, and that. Don't go back and forth.
I see. Did you also run with a stopwatch?
No, I never had a stopwatch.
Never had a stopwatch. I see. So what advice could you give to a young person that wants to start jogging? What advice? Is that the advice you'd give a young person? Don't run and stop? Don't run and stop if you're going to give advice to a young person that wants to be a beginner runner?
No, nobody did, no.
No, but if you were to give a young person today advice, you tell them not to run and stop, right?
I tell them not to run and stop. Just run, set a goal, and increase the goal. Don't stop and run.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. Mr. Jeckovich, how long did you work at Kimberly-Clark for?
35 years.
Did you drive your car there?
Nope, the car never been in the parking lot.
Your tires of your vehicle never made it into the Kimberly-Clark parking lot?
No.
How did you get there?
I walked.
What happens what would you do in a snowstorm?
Snowstorm, walk. Put the heavy boots on, go.
What would you do during a rainstorm?
Put the rain umbrella.
So nothing stopped you?
No.
Did you ever miss a day of work?
No, never worked a day working, never AWOL. Never late.
Never late. That's amazing.
And I had 2 or 3 different jobs to go. Remember, I had the laundromat, and I had the other one.
Yeah, Mr. Jeckovich had a duplex giant wash laundromat, which is impeccable. And the interesting part about that story is when Mr. Jeckovich would go at night, you could hear the roar and the thunder of the falls, which was it was right next to it. And then when Mr. Jeckovich would count his quarters, bring his quarters home to count in his basement, he would be going to the alley to go the alleyway. And this is 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And Mr. Jeckovich could still hear the thunder of the falls.
Yeah.
The thunder of the falls, which is a great story. What finally happened to your laundromat?
They put a convention center up, tore it down.
And the convention center was a dismal flop.
Yeah, it didn't last long.
It was a dismal flop, yet you had a beautiful business there. And when the city was putting the convention center in, what did they want to do with you?
Who?
The city.
They were gonna put me back up where the people have all, wash machines and that. I said, if I go up there, they got wash machines, they're not gonna come to me.
So they were gonna
So
put,
then I quit right there.
so they were gonna put you in the DeVoe area,
Yeah.
which is the best section of Niagara Falls, at least then, I don't know now.
The older section, people didn't have wash machines.
Yeah, and they wanted to put you in a section where every home had a washer and dryer.
Yeah,
So that would be a failure.
yeah.
So you just shut it down. And wasn't the tide would you ever do a laundromat today?
No,
Why not?
it's different culture.
Yeah.
You gotta watch the kids come in, try to pull the changer off the wall, so they could play the slot machine next door.
It wasn't it wasn't back then like
That wasn't
that.
backward then.
Tell us a funny story when you went to laundromat one time and your beautiful Volkswagen ended up in the middle of the road.
I parked the Volkswagen in front of the house. I went inside and I started working, cleaning up, and then I looked and I said, where the hell's the car? I looked outside, the car was in the middle of the street, cordoned around, the cops are out there. I said, what's going on? She said, well, the damn starter motor started the car up, pumped in the middle of the street.
Wow. Yeah, did it happen at your house also?
Huh?
Did it happen at your house also?
No, that was, at least in front of the house, I told Delphine, I said, when you park behind the green Hornet, don't park too close to her because this car will jump on you.
Minutes, please.
Even though it's in gear.
Yeah, even though it's a year. The starter engages when it's in first or second, and somehow the starter just keeps turning the car and you crawl down the road. Oh wow, that's an interesting story. That is an interesting story. Wow, minutes please?
Oh, 8.
Wow.
Well, she's limping pretty bad.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
I don't know.
So,
Trying to keep my foot up.
wow. Did you enjoy the laundromat more or your snow plowing business?
The what?
Did you enjoy the laundromat more or your snow plowing business?
Laundromat.
You like that better?
Yeah.
Who are most of your customers in the snowplow business?
So top the churches, funeral homes, it's a lot of residential.
Did all the funeral homes treat you nicely?
Huh?
Did all the funeral homes treat you nicely?
Oh yeah, and come 10 o'clock in the morning, big house will come in. John come in, had breakfast, had a big apron on, open the door, to smell that Italian spaghetti.
Mr. Jeckovich did plowing for the funeral homes of Joseph Spolino and Stefano Magadino. And Mr. Jeckovich was always invited in.
I plowed all the funeral homes, yeah.
Mr. Jeckovich was always invited in for big spaghetti dinners.
Yeah.
What was Stefano Magadino mostly noted for?
Magadino?
Yeah, what was Stefano?
He had that was a mafia thing going there, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, if you'd ever Google Stefano Magadino, that's who Mr. Jeckovich worked with, and in the funeral business.
Yeah.
And then later, Mr. Jeckovich's one of his family members, it does nothing but run funeral homes and funeral transportation business. So it's a small world we're in. So they all were very nice people.
What?
They were all very nice people to you, and they invited you in for spaghetti dinner on many occasions.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Even the people that lived there on the third floor, the people that had nothing, they come down. I said, John, I wiped the table for you, and I swept the floor for you, and that. They didn't expect that. The guy come in, draw a picture of the laundromat. He said, can I have a free wash? And I said, yeah, you can have 2 free washes.
Yeah, that's an interesting story you brought up. A fellow who had great talent, didn't have the money to use a washer or dryer, but he did a beautiful colored sketch for Mr. Jeckovich Laundromat.
Yeah.
And to this date, Mr. Jeckovich has it. And that paper that the artist drew on, it did not fade at all.
No.
That is bright as the day he painted it in 1961.
Yeah.
In 1961. When you were working for Spolino and Stefano Magadino Funeral Home, and when you'd go in there, did everything look above board, or did you have an idea it was a mafia-run business?
Mafia business, and funeral homes?
Yeah, did you notice anything strange when you'd go in and get paid?
No, I did my job. I just plowed as best I could.
And you did
Clean
it?
it up around the doors and that.
And you left?
They come and thanks, John, thanks, John.
And then they invite
Come on
you.
in for breakfast. I have a big apron on.
It's funny though, that when you're in funeral homes like Stefano Magadino's, and they have a beautiful big long dining room table, and the boss always sits at one end, but behind them, they're all Roman Catholics, and they all have beautiful crucifixes and pictures of Jesus. But I have a feeling if you crossed them in one way, it would be a different story.
Yeah.
They had a reputation.
Oh, yeah, that was different. That was the other side of the story.
Yeah, so they had all the religious features of the church, and the Magadino supplied Our Lady of the Rosary Church, primarily Monsignor Stanley Ormsby, with a beautiful black Lincoln and a beautiful black Cadillac at all times. It was in their garage. So many people try to buy their way to heavens, but from donating Cadillacs and new Lincolns, but
Yeah.
you can't buy your way to heaven.
Oh, we had that Packard in the garage for a long time before Stevie started to drive.
Yeah.
And he took it to school every day.
Was that Packard a good driver?
I drove it, yeah. Well, I drove it to Pennsylvania once. Delphine drove it one when Sally got sick.
Yeah.
Sally was driving, she got sick, and Delphine drove the other car.
When you married Delphine Stulak, was she a driver? Did
No,
she know?
she couldn't drive, no.
So where'd you teach her to drive at?
Over behind the putting green in Hyde Park.
Oh, so there's a big parking lot there?
Yeah.
So was that an automatic or a manual?
No, manual. She used to shift the gears. I could hear him grinding all the time.
You still hear him grinding now?
Yeah.
So how did it initially take off? Tell us how she started off learning to, how she started off on her first lesson.
I put it in the parking lot there. I put it in neutral, and I was sitting there. She was in the driver's seat. I said, all right, now put it in gear and lift your foot off the clutch real slowly. Boo, 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 boo.
How did she do it again?
Yeah, she did it.
How
again,
did
yeah.
she, show me again?
She said, I don't want to drive. I said, Delphine, stop it. Stop
Is that what you said? But did it jerk a lot? How did it go?
Yeah, she couldn't pull it. She pulled the clutch out too fast.
How many sessions of lessons did it take before Delphine learned how to drive?
I would say about 5, 6.
And then she was on her own.
Yeah, but she went to Pennsylvania once with us.
But let me ask you, did she pass her road test the first time around?
Yeah. Stevie didn't pass the road test, and I hit the stupid fire hydrant.
Okay, so your brother, let me just try to understand this. So your brother, who was in the military, teaching young cadets how to drive Jeeps,
Yeah.
had the background experience that he failed his road test by hitting a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of like the government would do. Minutes?
Let's see. Oh, 1 minute, 52
Yeah.
seconds.
Wow. Did you teach your mother to drive?
Teach my mother?
Yeah.
No, my mother didn't drive. My father didn't drive. No.
They didn't have any interest in,
They didn't have no interest.
especially your father who loved that Packard. I wonder why he didn't want to drive.
Yeah, I didn't drive. No.
Wow. So who taught you to drive?
I picked it up myself.
You just did it yourself.
Yeah. I drove without a license for a while.
You drove with no license?
I was 16 then too.
You had no license.
No.
Did you ever get pulled over?
No.
What would they do to
What would they do to you back then?
Huh?
What would they do to you if you had no license back then?
What would they do? They find you and they restrict your driving.
I see. And then did you pass your road test the first time around?
Yeah. And then I passed I passed what that was a truck driver's test.
You passed that too?
Tractor trailer. I passed that the first time.
So you were able to drive
I
tractor
had a 40-foot trailer behind me. It took me to Buffalo, Main Street, Buffalo. So I backed this thing up in this area here with a 40-foot trailer behind me.
Minutes?
30 seconds.
So you mean to tell me you also took a road test with
Yeah,
a tractor
I had a
trailer
Class 1 license. I
and
had
a 40-foot trailer behind?
Yeah, I had Class 1 license after.
I'll be damned.
Well, how do you park it? Did he park it?
How did you park it?
Huh?
How'd you back it in? How long did it take you to learn how to park it?
I would park behind the stadium and park behind the golf course there. I learned how to do it.
Wow, that was amazing. You did a lot of things, Mr. Jeckovich.
Good job.